This is the Tri-State Area's news leader, Channel 7 Eyewitness News, with Sarah Wallace, Mark Stevens with sports, Veronica Johnson with the exclusive AccuWeather forecast, and the Eyewitness News team. Now, Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Wallace. So close, but a year's worth of cheering and hoping is over tonight. The Yanks have been knocked out of the playoffs in a nail-biting finale. Mark Stevens joins us now with late details. Mark.
All year long we were saying how sick baseball was. I think it got well. It was a great series. Folks around here will not call it a great ending. The Yankees' 14-year wait to get back to the postseason ends in a fifth game under the Kingdome after winning the first two in the Bronx. Yanks go winless in Seattle. It goes 11 innings, and it looked like they had the big unit beat. In relief on one day's rest, Randy Velarde, who'd had an awful series, the RBI single to left. Yankees led it 5-4. But in the bottom of the 11th, Jack McDowell, in the first relief appearance of his career, gets beat by Edgar Martinez.
The pitch. Line. Base hit. Down the left field line. The tying run scores. Griffey heads toward third. He's being sent in. The throw home is not in time. Seattle wins. Seattle wins the division series on a double by Edgar Martinez.
It was an absolute classic series, the first including the wild card. So much for the argument against the new format. Yanks made it a thrilling close to the regular season, a thrilling end to the playoffs, but the season comes to an end tonight in Seattle. The Mariners will meet the Indians Tuesday night in Cleveland in the American League Championship Series. In a couple of minutes in sports, we'll be going live to the Kingdome. That's where Scott Clark is. He's trying to get into that Yankee clubhouse to get reaction on that incredible ending, a disappointing ending for the Yankees tonight under the Kingdome. All that a little bit later on. Sarah?
All right, Mark, thanks.
Okay.
Bob Page back with Rick Cerone in our studios, wrapping up the Yankees' loss tonight in extra innings to the Seattle Mariners. Interesting pitching matchup in this one. David Cone, we understand, after last night's loss, went into the Yankee locker room, personally shook the hand of everybody in the ball club and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take care of you guys tomorrow night. I'll win tomorrow night's game for you." It wasn't to be, but Bennis pitched well, Cone pitched well. Tell us about the early pitching matchup in this one.
Well, actually, Bob, I really like the effort from both starters. Bennis going on 3 days rest, established his fastball early, had a real live fastball early, striking out Boggs. The very first hitter, you knew that he had good life on his fastball. This ball, you don't see this happen to Boggs. He sees the ball too well, throws the ball right by him on the inside part of the plate. Now he shows that he's got a good breaking ball. Bernie Williams down and in on the slider. It was a real good pitching matchup early. What I liked, look at this. Remember last night we had a little controversy? Throws the ball at Boggsy's head, and now look at his good control. He comes right back with a backdoor slider and nails the outside part of the plate. Good pitching from Bennis early in the game. And Coney was up to the task.
I think the Yankees still had to feel pretty good, even though Bennis did have his good stuff early, because this is a guy who, since coming over from San Diego, had a very good record, but was very deceptive because his ERA was in the stratosphere.
Yeah, and we talked about it. Sometimes that's a little misleading, because if you're up 6-0, your team's ahead, you give up a couple of home runs, you know, you throw the ball down the middle of the plate. But Bennis did a great job for him, kept him in the ball game. Then it was up to Piniella, which way did he want to go? As far as Cone, you know, Coney was on his regular rest, and that made a big difference. He was able to give him 7 1/3 innings, firing the ball. And you know what? He had leadoff doubles all night. Look at, he gets Buhner on the split finger. This is what makes Coney so tough, is that he can feature so many different types of pitches. Luis Sojo can't catch up to the high fastball. Coney, you know, will also drop down, throw sidearm. Here's another splitter, gets Wilson. That was earlier in the ball game, and he continued to throw that way. He had a lot of tough pitches. He threw 146 pitches tonight, 85 strikes, but they were tough pitches. He gave the Yankees what they really needed.
Yeah, Cone really gutted it out tonight, but we were talking before we went on the air this evening. I still don't think there's any question that this is not the David Cone of a few years ago, especially that Met fans are used to saying that David Cone was so awesome and overpowering. If he had his good stuff, he was a threat to pitch a no-hitter almost any time out, and I think Cone's lost just a little bit.
Well, I think it's all the innings that he's thrown over the years and the types of pitches, but he gave him a quality start tonight. Got a little roughed up, but he gave them what they really needed. And then finally in the 8th inning, he lost his control. He had no walks going into the 8th, winds up walking 3 batters. And we talked about Doug Strange, walked in the tying run on a 3-2 splitter. I think if David could have one pitch back, he would want that splitter. Doug Strange's not used to playing all the time. Throw him a fastball in that situation with the bases loaded. but the splitter bounced and they got the tying run in.
Offensively for the Yankees, Paul O'Neill was excellent this series. And Don Mattingly, what an inspiration he has been to this ball club. If the Yankees get nothing else out of this series, I think it's clear that George Steinbrenner has got to bring this guy back next season. He's got to treat him with respect.
Well, the Mattingly factor, I think that carried the Yankees the last 3 weeks of the season. He played his heart out, hit over 400 in this series. Early in the game, Paul O'Neill jumped on a fastball from Bennis. Bennis was trying to throw the fastball up and in. See the catcher shift in? Did not get it all the way in. O'Neill, another home run off of Bennis. That gave the Yankee the lead, 2-1 leader at that time. And O'Neill, you know, it's so close whether Bennis gets the fastball all the way in or just a little bit out of the plate. Here's Don Mattingly, classic Mattingly. Fastball off the plate away, doesn't try to pull the ball. That was the go-ahead runs for the Yankees. Put them in front 4-2. But classic Don Manning, the way he stayed with the ball and drove it to left field.
Rick, Michael Kay now is standing by in Seattle, ready to talk with us about this devastating Yankees loss to the Mariners tonight. Michael, where are you and what's happening out there? What's being said right now?
Well, I'm right outside the Yankee locker room, and it's so loud right now because the people are leaving the stadium, and they're screaming as they're coming down the ramps. I just came out of the Yankee clubhouse, a lot of tears, people hugging each other. The only one talking to the media while I was in there was Mattingly. Mattingly said, we really have nothing to be ashamed of. We left everything out on the field. Mattingly felt that when Martinez double went down the line, he was thinking second and third at best. He didn't think that the run would score, but it kind of stuck there in the outfield. Gerald Williams made a good throw to Tony Fernandez. Fernandez couldn't get it home in time. And Bob, just the way this series was played, you knew that that was the way it was going to end. It just had to end on the last swing of the series. Absolutely brilliant. Right now, Seattle is absolute pandemonium. Most of the stadium is still full, and the people that are leaving are really emptying out their throats.
And Michael, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago before you came here, regardless of the fact that Yankee fans are disappointed by what happened tonight, and the Yankees are too, this was tremendous for baseball. People looking in tonight on national TV, this was the only playoff game going on. 57,000 screaming people in the Kingdome. It's been that way there the last couple weeks. These great crowds we had here in New York. Perhaps baseball recouped a little bit of what it lost from its latest devastating strike.
Well, I think it's going to take a while, but this is certainly a great step. I said on the radio side that, you know, this is the best of times, and it's also the worst of times. You will not get a better series than you did right now. Every single game except for the Friday game, the one that Johnson started, ended on the last swing or was in doubt until the last swing of the bat. So this was a brilliant series, and you're right, the entire nation was watching Seattle-Washington today, and they got themselves one heck of a ball game. Unfortunately for Yankee fans, that will end the season. A lot of questions, though, Bob. You have to wonder, was this Mattingly's last game? A lot of free agents in that clubhouse. Mattingly, Wade Boggs, Mike Stanley, Buck Showalter. Who comes back? Who doesn't come back? This might have been the last time we see this Yankee team this way, but what a way for them to go out. They scored off Johnson in the top of the 11th inning, and then they gave it right back up in the bottom of the 11th. The one thing that I found very telling, though, one-run lead, bottom of the 11th inning, you would think that that would be Wetland's time. They didn't have anybody up in the bullpen. It was totally Jack McDowell. Not a second guess, but certainly it speaks volumes about the confidence or lack thereof that Buck had about his bullpen. The only guys up were Rivera, Pettit, and McDowell throughout the whole game. None of the really true relievers were up, and that tells you all you need to know about how this bullpen deserted the Yankees in this series.
Yeah, Mike, how about Randy Johnson, the performance he put on after just one day off? Jack McDowell gave up the big hit, but what about the pitching 3 innings on only 1 day rest? I know it's their work day, but that's extending them a little bit too long, don't you think?
Absolutely, but Piniella said that Johnson wanted to do it. I asked him before the game, I said, say if you go to Johnson, you know, what about your pitching for the ALCS? And I asked Buck Showalter the same question, and pretty much what they said was, you have to get there first. If you have to patch it together somehow, that's fine. But the big concern with Johnson, Rick, I agree with you. This is a guy who missed 2 separate turns because of soreness in his left shoulder. But each team, the Yankees and the Mariners, let everything hang out there on the field. They left nothing to be questioned. The effort was there. And Johnson, I think that was going to be his last inning because Belcher was up. He gave them the innings that they needed. He made some big strikeouts. He came in when the Yankees had runners on first and second, nobody out. and he would not cave in. He finally caved in the top of the 11th inning against a guy who had a .500 batting average during regular season play, Randy Velarde, but somehow the Mariners picked him up. That's what this whole season's been about for the Mariners. If you look at their week, these last 7 days for the Mariners have been incredible. Monday they faced elimination, Johnson won for them. Friday they faced elimination, Johnson won for them. Yesterday they faced elimination, they bound it together and win, and now they faced elimination again, so they're 4-0 in do-or-die games. And maybe, just maybe, this could be a team of destiny.
Michael, I want a two-part answer to this one question coming up here. The New York Yankees just making it into the playoffs as a wild card team and then losing this first-round series to Seattle. Is this a successful season for the Yankees? I want your opinion, and more importantly, what do you think George Steinbrenner's opinion about that is?
Well, I'll give you Steinbrenner's first. I don't think that he'll think this is a success, especially with the team up 2-0. He was just in the clubhouse, and as I was walking in, I think he shook Mattingly's hand. He didn't say much to anybody. People are just slumped over in their seats. If you're asking me, well, with all the injuries that they had, the fact that they were able to get into the playoffs, yeah, I feel it's successful. Once they got there, obviously they wanted to move further. Highest payroll in baseball. They wanted to go further. So if you look at it in a completely black and white thing, I think you'd say it was a failure. They were built to win the World Series this year. This team could drastically change next year, but really it's not my opinion that counts most. It's the opinion of George Steinbrenner. And again, those questions remain. Does he bring back Mattingly? Does he bring back Boggs? And most importantly, I think, does he bring back Buck Showalter? And an ancillary answer to that, does Buck Showalter want to come back?
And how about Gene Michael, the Yankees general manager? Or is it a foregone conclusion that he's gone?
I think that Gene Michael will not be back. I think he will be reassigned as a scout, and I think it all comes down to money. Unless Gene Michael decides to take less money, he had a 5-year contract, 2 years guaranteed. Now, if George Steinbrenner picks up this contract now, that means the final 3 years are guaranteed at between $500,000 and $600,000 a year. And I think George Steinbrenner thinks that's a little bit too much. If you're asking me what I would do, I think Gene Michael's done a great job. I would keep him, and I would sign Buck Showalter to a 5-year deal. Buck Showalter is more important than any player that the Yankees have in that clubhouse. He has gained the respect of Major League Baseball. People around baseball now think the Yankees are a place to play because they have a manager who's on top of things. He's respected by the most respected managers in baseball, like Sparky Anderson and Tony La Russa. I think it would be a huge mistake to shake this team up. You have to make some changes. You sign Cone, you sign McDowell, you've got Pettit, you've got Hitchcock. You build from there. You hope that Jimmy Key comes back. But just because they lost this 5th game here in Seattle, I certainly don't think that you have an overhaul. That would be the complete wrong thing to do.
Hey, Mike, I would have to say it's pretty good for Seattle right now to get that new stadium built. And the people are going crazy over there, over 50,000. I think that's a good selling point. Maybe that vote will change this time around.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rick, Lou Piniella told me after yesterday's game, right out on the field, he said if they took the vote right now, it would be an overwhelming win. I think it's going to get done. I really do. They'll have to do it in another way. I don't think people here want any kind of sales tax. What they're going to end up doing is a sin tax, cigarettes, tobacco, maybe another hotel tax, maybe issuing some bonds. But somehow they will build a retractable dome, and they'll probably build it right in the parking lot here at the Kingdome. This is a city that has really been touched by baseball. 57,000 plus in 4 games this week alone, and you can imagine what this place is going to be like in games 1 and 2 of the American League Championship Series. You're right, Rick. They won more than a division series. I think they won the hearts of a city, and they might have won themselves a new stadium.
All right, Michael, we'll hear from you a little bit later on in this program with more live from Seattle as we continue to wrap up this New York Yankees loss to the Mariners tonight at the Kingdome. Rick Cerone and I will be back right after we pause again for these messages here on MSG Sports Desk Special Edition. Bob Page back with former Yankee catcher Rick Cerone. We're wrapping up this Yankees victory. And of course, we'll be looking ahead as well to the other playoff action in Major League Baseball and going back out to Michael Kay, hopefully for some Yankee interviews shortly on this very program. Rick, now the big question to be asked as the Seattle Mariners get ready to take on the Cleveland Indians is if the Mariners left it all out on the field in this series versus the Yankees.
Well, I think that has to be a little bit of the concern of the Mariners, but what a great game to end this division championship on, and to have home field advantage against the Cleveland Indians, who won more games than anybody.
Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, you know, I like the wild card system that they instituted in baseball this year, but it has to be refined and it's got to be fine-tuned. You can't have the Indians playing these series on the road basically as they have.
No, they've been tough all year.
Okay. They're screaming at us downstairs now that Michael Kay is ready, and he has George Steinbrenner with him live, so let's go right back out to Seattle.
Thank you, Bob and Rick. I am here with George Steinbrenner, and George, you have to be pretty disappointed about this.
Well, I'm disappointed more for the young players on our team than I am for myself. You know, I've had the pleasure. I know how it feels to win. I know how it feels to lose. I've been in the game a lot of years in a lot of different sports, and this was a truly magnificent series. It really was. And it's a shame that anybody had to lose this series or this game, Michael, but our kids I'm very proud of. They fought, they fought, they fought. We missed our chances, which is, you know, part of sports, part of competition. We had chances to put this game away, and we just didn't do it. We certainly had chances last night, ahead by 5 runs, and we couldn't hold it. So, you know, give credit where credit's due, but remember our kids, because they battled, and they really did. They put everything they had into it. They're just devastated, and life will be there tomorrow, and you have to go on. Just like when we got a wiped clean in 75 by Cincinnati, we went to work the next morning. I'll be at work on next year tomorrow morning, and so will some of my people. So I just hope the fans in New York understand how great this group of young players was, young and old.
George, I know that this is a disappointing time for you, and you say you go to work tomorrow. The big questions a lot of New Yorkers have: what's the fate of Buck Showalter? What's the fate of Gene Michael? Also Mattingly and Boggs. Can you address those?
It's difficult to address that now. I mean, this is a very difficult time. Everybody is very down, and I'm not even going to talk about that. We'll start looking at everything tomorrow and where we're going, what we're going to do for next year. But we'll be back. I guarantee you that. We'll be back. And I'm glad that some of our young players were here who didn't get to play, but I brought them along on the trip just so they can experience the thrill of what it's like to be in this competition and how tough it is to lose. I don't want them to like losing. And I think all those young players learned a lot just being here. And I'm only sorry that for Don Mattingly and some of these fellas, the first chance couldn't have been what they wanted. He was magnificent in this series. And David Cohen tonight showed such great courage, but 147 pitches, a lot of pitches. And he just was magnificent. So now we go on. Life doesn't stop here. We go on. We take the next step.
George, if Mattingly wants to come back, do you take him back?
Well, we'll have to talk. Don and I are going to talk. We haven't had a chance to. I just sat with him a few minutes in there before the press got in, Michael, and we had a little talk between us, and I just told him how proud I was of him, and I was. He did great. We just, maybe you could say we just didn't have enough, probably the way to say it in the end, but boy, our guys gave a great effort, a hell of an effort. Now I'm going. Okay?
All right, thank you, George.
All right, Michael.
George Steinbrenner here outside the Yankee locker room, gracious enough to join us after a very tough loss for the Yankees. And back to you, Bob and Rick, in the studio in New York.
Michael, as is sometimes the case with Mr. Steinbrenner, it's almost more interesting to read between the lines. If it was such a great season and he's so proud of the Yankees, why don't you come out and tell us that you want your manager to come back? Why don't you come out and tell us that you want your captain to come back?
Absolutely, he had the chance right there. He decided to sidestep the question. He's pretty good at that. This was the time to say, I want Buck Showalter back. I want Gene Michael back. I think that was a pretty positive sign about Mattingly. He didn't just dismiss it, but he didn't say, I definitely want him back if Mattingly wants to come back. So a lot of answers still out there, hanging out there in the midst of a very tough Yankee loss.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. Michael Kay reporting live from Seattle, as you saw with Yankees owner George Steinbrenner a couple of moments ago. Now, here's what Don Mattingly had to say following tonight's loss to the Mariners.
Well, I appreciate really the whole series. It was a great series. I thought about a lot of things leading up into this game, and it was going to be tough for either team to lose this one today. Obviously, unfortunately, we're the one that lost it. But, it's been a great series. I think both teams, we both had to play great down the stretch just to get here. That's why I thought about it. It's going to be a shame somebody's going to have to go home because of the way the series has panned out.
All right, Rick Cerone, what was the real Don Mattingly, the guy that we saw struggle horribly at the plate throughout most of the season and booed at times by people and criticized by the media in New York, or the guy who played so well in the series against Seattle?
Well, one thing that Donnie did is he showed his heart, that's for sure. He was a gamer all the way. I think his back just eliminates what he can do on the field every day. I think it makes it a little bit difficult for him. I think the other thing you have to consider, the back also hampers his off-season working. You know, he doesn't use the weights like he used to. He's not as strong. He's a little bit older. But one thing, he showed the heart of a champion in this series, and he led by example. You don't have to hit 500 to do it. He was, I'll tell you what, he made me proud being an ex-Yankee.
And a former teammate of his, and you guys are close. What do you think he's going to do? Do you think he might retire because he's not the Don Mattingly, say, of 8, 10 years ago?
I think he's probably considering it, Bob. I really do. I think he's considering it. I think he also is considering maybe playing closer to home. Lives in Evansville, so maybe that might be an option for him also.
Rick, quick pick. Seattle, Cleveland? Quick.
Cleveland.
You like Cleveland. Cincinnati in a National League?
Cincinnati because of their 3 lefty starters. I'm going with Cincinnati.
And in the World Series?
Go with, who did I pick, Cleveland? Yeah, Cleveland in the World Series,
in the Battle of Ohio. Rick Cerone, thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it despite the circumstances of the Yankees' loss tonight at Seattle. This special extended edition of the MSG Sports Desk. On behalf of Michael Kay, Rick Cerone, Bob Page saying good night.